do you like or love Lane Kiffin still being in the SEC?
Oh, I love it. Are you kidding?
I mean,
I
who
love
else would
it.
care about Ole Miss if Lane Kiffin wasn't there?
Nobody would care about Ole Miss if Lane Kiffin wasn't there. No, I flat out love it. I think the golden age of SEC, the one magical year was 2009 when Lane was at Tennessee and Steve Spurrier was at Florida, because you had the two biggest personalities in the SEC head coaching and the SEC at the same time. And I wish they could have crossed paths a lot more than they have.
Okay, tell us about the trolling of Hugh Freeze.
So, Hugh
By the
Freeze.
way, it's really difficult to tag people on your Twitter post when you want to talk about Hugh Freeze, because I saw by just punching in his name, there were at least Hugh Freeze's hookers or Hugh Freeze's burner account of people having fake accounts, having some fun with him. So it's difficult, but it's up there. Feel free to follow, and maybe you can get a special on a Friday night. Go ahead.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so basically, Hugh Freeze has been getting into a lot of trouble recently from Auburn fans because they have been struggling on the recruiting trail. They are at number 86 in the 247 Sports team recruiting rankings for 2026, which is dead last in the SEC. They have the worst recruiting class. At the same time, AL.com is reporting that Hugh Freeze logged nearly a dozen rounds of golf since in June. Nearly a dozen rounds, more than 4 other SEC coaches with public handicap records. So it's basic.
Let me tell you, I have zero problem with that in the old system. But with the new early signing period, you need to be recruiting in the summer.
You do. You absolutely need to be recruiting in the summer. And Lane Kiffin decided. So this week, Auburn, it's from my understanding, Hugh Freeze took part in, celebrated a Ryder Cup style win with Moores Mill Golf Club, where he's a member, over the weekend. And this happened as it came out that Auburn has just 7 verbal commitments for its 2026 recruiting class and picked up a new commitment from a 3-star tight end on the 4th of July. And that was all they got on 4th of July weekend, when people like Tennessee last week were getting 4 or 5 recruits at commits at a time. So Lane Kiffin decided to tweet on July the 6th to Hugh Freeze, tweeting about his Ryder Cup win. "Great job, coach. Game is on fire."
That's a shot.
That is a shot. That is a shot, right?
And let's look at the motivation. Lane Kiffin would not take just a wild, out of the blue shot at Tennessee, because he knows he left Tennessee. But Auburn passed on him for Hugh Freeze. So there is nobody in the SEC, including Hugh Freeze's extra current wife, that wants him to have less success in the SEC than Lane Kiffin. He wants him to go like 3-9, and Lane could potentially get that job, which is a much better job than Ole Miss.
Oh, totally agree. And let's also point this out. Like, okay, Lane, as we know, is a very I know the dichotomy of this. Hugh Freeze, Southerner, very like religious Baptist type. You know what I'm talking about? Outwardly up front, the Jimmy Swaggart types, who just recently passed away, Jerry Falwell type person who, funny enough, he coached at Liberty. Lane Kiffin, a very secular California kid who probably has disdain for religious fundamentalism. Would you agree with that? Not religion, but religious fundamentalism.
Well, yeah. Man, I hate to judge somebody's religion, but I mean, we all heard enough. It wasn't just one incident. It wasn't just the car wreck. It was.
Well, I'm not talking about his personal behavior. I'm talking about just in general. Lane Kiffin is probably not a fan of like religious fundamentalism that like dictates like, you know, that you got to be this way, and if you're gay, you're going to hell, and all that type of stuff. You know what I mean? He doesn't like that. Hugh Freeze is that type of religious fundamentalist. So Lane Kiffin probably already has disdain for him, because here's a guy like Hugh Freeze who throws his religious fundamentalism in your face when he's out here like banging prostitutes left and right. And so like it's the way a lot
of sleeping with or seeing, but banging. There you go.
It's the way a lot of people like myself feel about like TV evangelists, who like they preach to you about how you need to live this moral life every day, and then you turn your back and they're caught picking up hookers in the back of their car. And
Here's why I don't have a problem with as much as Lane. I don't feel like he was ever preachy.
no, Lane's not preachy.
Okay.
Hugh Freeze is. No, I'm saying Lane is a secular California kid.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
So those type of people, have a big problem with the preachy Southern Baptist Christians that tell you how you got to live your life, because they find them, people like Lane find them to be hypocritical. And guess what? Hugh Freeze is wildly hypocritical. Bible verses every day. I do this, I do that. And you're the biggest snake in the history of coaching. You have a harem of prostitutes coming in and out your house, okay? And you're out here tweeting Bible verses and going to preachy schools like Liberty. And so I'm just thinking, Lane Kiffin and Hugh Freeze behave very similarly. It's just that Lane Kiffin is more of, I'm not here preaching morality to you, whereas Hugh Freeze is. And people like Lane have a very fundamental problem with that. It's basically like, remember this, Dave? Remember the Bill Clinton impeachment in 98 when Bill Clinton was getting impeached and all these family values people were like, oh, what he did was horrible. He cheated on his wife. And it turned out they were all having affairs too at the exact same time. So yeah, it's Lane Kiffin views Hugh Freeze as that. And so he has disdain for Hugh Freeze, the person, probably too, just as much as he has disdain for Auburn for hiring Hugh Freeze over him.
How old's Hugh Freeze? I don't know how Lane Kiffin is. Lane Kiffin's 51 because he's like a month younger than me.
Yeah, Hugh Freeze is, Hugh Freeze is 55. Hugh Freeze is 55.
I can't just say in terms of the rest of their lives, but in terms of the next decade, which coach wins more games? And it can be where he is, he gets another job somewhere else, he gets fired. I think that the latter would be the case with Freeze. The former would be the case with Kiffin. But whatever the case is, who do you think wins more games in the next 10 years? Dylan says, my dad graduated with Hugh Freeze in high school. Trust me, that's just the surface.
I'm not going to go fully deep into it, but Dylan, I think you're from Memphis too, aren't you? Because I'm from Memphis and I know a lot about Hugh Freeze's time at Briarcrest. Yeah, that dude was a creep. I'll just say that. I'll just go that far. And
we do need to point out with Lane, there were rumors of seeing women that he shouldn't see.
But
I don't recall any of them being close to minors or prostitutes.
Yeah, I don't remember. Yeah, that's where I was going. Close to minors. You don't have to. You may not have to say close to with Hugh Freeze. I'm just going to say that. But yes, everything Lane Kiffin did, as far as we understand, was legal and consensual. And here's the other thing: Lane Kiffin wasn't a snake in the sense of to his players. I mean, have you ever heard of? Did you ever find Lane Kiffin to be a liar to his players? He's not the nicest guy, but he wasn't a liar, was he?
I don't think he was a liar, but I think all coaches lie to a certain extent to their players. When you tell a player, let's say player B, you can beat out player A, just keep working hard. You probably know deep down that player A is better and you're going to start player A. So I think everybody lies to some extent as motivation.
Right, but there's a level of lying a little bit because you have to, as a coach, to just being an outright snake. Hugh Freeze is an outright snake with the way he lied to the 2016 recruiting class when the Ole Miss sanctions were coming down the pipe, but he wanted them linked in where they couldn't transfer because of pre-transfer portal rules. So that's what I'm talking about. Lane Kiffin was never that. I think, so you were asking who's going to win more games long-term. Look, Dave, I want to say something that's kind of intriguing. We talked about SEC Blue Bloods last segment. I think Auburn's barely a blue blood. If you want to talk about like places, like yes, Auburn's a better job than Ole Miss. I think we agree with that. But I think we also have to agree that Auburn is not in the tier of the other blue bloods in the SEC. They have some real issues at that school because they have to compete with Georgia and Alabama for all their area recruits. And I think it's a lot harder with that. So when you take that into account, I think Lane Kiffin could win more games because the other thing I've seen from Lane Kiffin just on the field, I think there's a lot more respect for Lane Kiffin just because of the fact that Lane Kiffin's at least honest about being kind of a bit of a deviant, whereas Hugh Freeze is like, oh, I'm all forgiven now, and God has chosen me to lead this Auburn football program, and I'm doing the Lord's work. He's that type of guy.
Of all your voices, your television evangelist has just become my favorite.
Yes. Hugh Freeze is Righteous Gemstones. Everybody watch that show. He's Baby Billy from Righteous Gemstones. Okay, so that's Hugh Freeze. Now, again, Kiffin, I think
Righteous
people.
Gemstones, that's a movie. Did I need
No,
to
it's a,
watch that?
no, it's a
That's
TV
a
show.
series.
TV show about televangelists. Yes.
Do I need to watch
Um,
that? Because I get clips on it from Facebook all the time.
Yes, you need to watch it. It's hilarious. But it actually just ended. So Hugh
What's
Freeze.
the one line I keep seeing is, is it out of line here? I'm just trying to get $2 million and 8 ball of cocaine.
Yeah.
That's the line I keep seeing that is just so.
That's Baby Billy. That's Baby Billy. So yes, Hugh Freeze is Baby Billy from Righteous Gemstones. I think that I think the players already have more respect for Lane Kiffin because Hugh Freeze is such a fraud. But then on top of that, Dave, what's Hugh Freeze's offense? I mean, I think you know the way he what is his philosophy? He runs the spread, but the only cutting edge thing he figured out was if you hire like 4 6'5" receivers and line them up, no one can guard you. Well, nowadays you can the defenses have kind of adjusted to that, haven't they? To a certain degree.
True. You asked me Lane's philosophy. I'll say this: the thing that separates Hugh Freeze, I think Hugh Freeze is better at putting together a game plan before the game. I think Lane Kiffin is the best natural play caller I've ever seen, other than Steve Spurrier in the SEC.
Oh, I think so too. I also think Lane Kiffin is able to adjust his scheme a lot better. Lane Kiffin has a little bit of David Cutcliffe in him that he can adapt, right? A lot better than a lot of other coaches.
Dylan corrected me. It's $2 million and an 8 ball.
Yeah. Yeah.
I gotta get into that show. Have you watched Stick lately with Owen Wilson?
No, I have not. Is it funny?
It's more of a drama. It's very heartfelt, very good. It's very good. I would encourage people to check that out. I'm waiting for the next episode to come out on Wednesday. I rarely get in the position where I'm waiting on episodes now with everything that we can binge watch, but I am. All right. At the end of the day, what happens to Lane Kiffin? Because I think everybody is curious about this. Does Lane Kiffin get a better job, or do things not work out at Ole Miss and he gets a lesser job?
Lane Kiffin's going to get a better job because Ole Miss doesn't want him to go. And I don't know where that better job will be. Maybe it's Florida State. Maybe it's Florida. Maybe it's LSU. Maybe LSU is tired of Brian Kelly because he hasn't taken him to the next step. But Lane Kiffin's going to get a better job somewhere. And when he finally does at age 55, I think you'll see him get a national title. I do.
Wow. Wrong. Did I tell you that at SEC Media Days last year, I said something about his father passing away, and he just seemed more mature. I have trouble putting my finger completely on it, but that can change a lot of people. When your whole life's football and you learn from your dad, who's also your dad, there's a personal connection, a professional connection, and then he's gone. That can change a person. Lane Kiffin may be a different person than who we knew in 2009.
Oh, I'm sure he is, but he's still the same funny troll to a certain. He's still got the personality. He just knows how to channel it a little better. I do think Lane Kiffin, and here's the other reason. Here's another thing of why Lane Kiffin will have more success than Hugh Freeze. I thought about this. I don't know if you know this, Dave, but I'll tell you how. And when you talk about personal character, Greg Sankey was much more willing to forgive Lane Kiffin than Hugh Freeze. I don't know if people know, but Greg Sankey and the SEC worked tooth and nail to try to keep Hugh Freeze from ever getting hired by an SEC school again. Auburn just was desperate and threw the middle fingers up and said, we don't care. We're going to hire him anyway. But we know from the inside that this is one of the reasons Tennessee didn't go after Hugh Freeze. One, because Hugh Freeze had his own scandals, but Greg Sankey was wielding all the power he possibly had to try to keep Hugh Freeze out of the SEC for the rest of eternity. And he wasn't doing that with Lane Kiffin.
What the H brought to you by Rick Terry and Rick Terry Jewelry Design. What the H? What was Lane thinking?
What the H?
Wow, I never worked hard on anything. What a cool life.
For real? The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones. ThanksandJones.com. Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer. Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
At some point, does Lane Kiffin need to mature to get a better job, or do you think he's ready right now? I realize we're trying to look inside his psyche, which is difficult. From people I talk to around the conference, around the region, think that yes, he's still fun, but he's not over the top party animal. There were some things happening in Knoxville that should have never happened. Your thoughts on Kiffin's future?
Oh, I think Kiffin's future is bright because I also think there's some schools that'll look past it. But I do think he is mature enough to take certain jobs. I don't think, let's just put it out there, I don't think a school like Alabama is ever going to hire him, right? Alabama is they fired Mike Price, and I think they may have overreacted to firing Mike Price, honestly, back in the day. I mean, the story was funny, but Mike Price was a great offensive mind, and I would have loved to see that work in the SEC, that style.
He had to fire him. He had a prostitute in his hotel room during a booster golf tournament.
Hey man, sometimes
You know how he got busted, right? Did you hear the official story?
Oh, because she got mad at something, and so she ran up his tab, right?
Yeah, she got mad that he left, and she called room service and said, "I'll take one of everything you have." So they had to they called him, and he's on the golf course with boosters. Can you imagine getting that phone call? How do you step away from that conversation? Looks like you got a 4-footer there. I'm sure you can knock it in. I got to go take care of this prostitute in my hotel room. How does that conversation happen?
He thought, and the crazy part is, the only reason he said he thought he was going to get seconds that afternoon. I mean, he would have gotten away with it if he wasn't greedy and didn't want seconds. And it's funnier than the Petrino one to me, honestly, just because of that.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
and you know that this is going way back in time. We had someone on that claimed that she was in that hotel room and she was next door. And I'm doing a radio show in Knoxville. She calls out of left field, and she sounded sincere. And I said, "I'm just curious, did you hear any Roll Tide?" And she goes, "Oh, I heard a lot of Roll Tide." Through the hotel wall. Do I know that it's true? No. Do I hope it's true? Yes, because it's hilarious.
Yes, oh man, they need to make a movie on that.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine how that conversation goes where Mike Price says, "If you don't mind, we're doing such and such, can you yell Roll Tide?"
It's just real loud.
As loud as you can.